Woosah. All right, welcome to Beyond the Bench podcast, where tonight we're going to discuss a conversation that revolves around the automotive industry, from the manufacturing aspect down to the dealer's level, down to the management, service, sales, technician level, to the point to where everything from the independent side and the mobile technician side needs to be on the same page. So tonight I have with me Dustin Geisel from Geisel Automotive LLC. Tell me a little bit about yourself, sir.
All right. So I have been an automotive technician for going on about 16 years, and I am certified with Jaguar Land Rover, Chrysler, and GM. And I build transmissions for Chrysler and GM. I've been doing this my whole life, and it started as a need to find a career path as fast as possible. And that's kind of what I ended up getting into cars because I needed something quick to find a way to make money as an adult, because I had a lot of responsibilities when I was young.
When you were young, how old are you now?
I'm 33, but I grew up fast. You know what I mean? Had a lot of stuff going on. The reason was because I got custody of my brother and sister when I was 19. So I started out working on cars and working for Firestone and trying to do the adult things as a kid. I put myself through college. I had to get through school to, get to do this. And it was just the fastest way that I could see that I could start a career and build something for myself.
Good. Let's get down to some some points of the discussion we're going to talk about tonight. So, from a manufacturing standpoint, is that where you started, or was it something independent side, or just on your own, or something what brought you into this?
So I've always fixed things. I've always been a tinkerer. Even before I could drive, I was working on my mom's car because we always had car problems. And I didn't know anything about cars. I was probably doing more damage than I was fixing it. But I started out actually went to CTC. I did a career tech center for automotive technology. And for my senior year, instead of going to the automotive technology class, I could go, and work at a shop. So I worked at an independent shop for the last half of the day. And then when I graduated, my very first real job was Firestone Complete Auto Care. And then while I was going to work at Firestone, I was also going through the CAT program at Sinclair Community College.
So how did you like your experience with Firestone?
Honestly, it's hit and miss. It was good and it was bad. The thing that I didn't like about it was they push tires. They make tires. They would rather you do 20 tires than do an engine job. Or, back then we were doing a lot of, intake gaskets and stuff on the 3.8 liters and the GM stuff. That was good money. And I was young and learning, and they didn't like us doing the bigger jobs. So I felt like I was kind of stuck. There wasn't a whole lot of room for advancement there. And I wanted to be one of the best technicians in the world. I wanted to be good at what I do. And I didn't feel, that I was going to grow anymore. When I was working at Firestone, I was one of the youngest ASE masters they had. And I felt like I was just stuck. I was just done.
So how did you get your ASEs?
I went in and I took all the tests. So it was funny because the store that I worked at, we didn't have any master ASE technicians. And my store manager comes out and he goes, the first person to become ASE master is going to be the shop foreman. I was like, bet. So I went and I took all the tests and I passed, and I came back and I slapped my certification on the window, and all of the guys, they were all older than I was. And they were like, absolutely not. Dustin is not going to be the shop foreman. I was like, but you said. And I ended up not getting it, but it was pretty funny.
So when's the last time you recertified?
Oh, that's not fair. It's been a while. I think my certifications expired 2 years ago. Dealerships they don't really care much about them. I need to recertify. I've never had anybody really care about it. Chrysler doesn't really care about them. I know GM still uses them.
Oh yeah, because guess what? They get a spiff off of it. They get paid. They get paid by the training of the technician.
Yeah, the dealership does. Yeah,
the dealership does.
Yeah,
so that's where they push on that part of it.
Right.
So let's go on that aspect and let's push where you went and left there. And where are you at now?
Currently, I am at. You want me to name the dealership, or you just want me to tell you the brand?
Whatever you want to do.
I'll just to avoid any more problems because I just had some.
Okay.
I'm at a Chrysler dealership currently.
And being there and understanding that they're not pushing that certification. And what are you seeing at that? What are you seeing at that level? So we went from working at Firestone that's going to push and they want you to have these certifications and you had that certification. Now you're two years later and you don't have them. You let them lapse and you're somewhere that does not care about that certification.
So I'm going to be honest with you. The only reason why I haven't certified is because, being family man, I support my family by myself. I haven't been able to come up with the extra money to just go do it. There's always something else. Car breaks down, kids, soccer, whatever. And because they're not pushing it, I haven't really worried about trying to come up with the money. But for me and for my personal gain, I value the ASC tests and I want to be certified. Actually, I was just talking to my wife about it last week. I was like, I really need to recertify these. And she's like, yeah, I know, but I think it was like $250 to recertify. Somewhere on those lines.
What if you could use the ASC renewal app and you could pay $40 a year and be certified by answering eight to nine questions a month that are simplified by the time you reach, I think it is 8 questions fulfilled, that it would automatically recertify.
I didn't know that was an option.
I've dealt with that and I've been through that. And I'm actually fighting ASC right now, to be 100% honest. That where I've went through that, it shows on their website that I'm fully master certified because I let 3 laps. And I tested the system. Is this going to work? Is this going to happen? And even working with or having discussions with the director over the training side of ASC, which has reached out to some of the transmission rebuilders on the automatic side of trying to revamp information that is updated. So they're trying to work on updated information with that section. And I need to reach back out to him. Like I'm at the point to where I want to say back in November, I started to where I reached everything to be full on the master list, plus diesel on top of it. And at the time, it was like 6 to 8 weeks backlog before you can get everything in the mail, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, we'll just wait some time, right? So I played it out. Didn't see anything. Made a phone call. Made some emails back and forth. Never got a response. Finally got through to somebody. And they tell me that, well, right now it shows that it's 3 to 4 weeks out. But looking at your situation, when I tell them like this was months ago, this was 4 months ago to get everything in. Where is it at? Well, it shows that it was shipped out here and that you'll see it within a week. Guess what, Dustin? I didn't see it and I had not seen it. And that was a month ago.
So waiting on something in the mail, are you waiting for the actual certification to come in the mail?
Yeah, I'm waiting on the certification plus the patches and everything. Like I can show everything online.
Oh, okay.
And
I
this
was going
is
to
the
say
biggest problem that you may run into even using the app and some of the others that I've suggested that, this can work and it does work. It shows it. And it even shows it on GM side that I'm master certified through ASC or I'm a master tech. And the certification is there, but I don't have it in my hand. That is the problem that I'm running into with them, that I need to reach out and figure out, the truth behind it. This is where I get at the point where I work with vendors and suppliers on this situation. I get to the root cause. When I go to expos or I go to seminars, I get handed, everybody wants to reach out and here's my card. So I hang on to it on purpose. I do it on purpose because if I have a problem or an issue, I'm going to pull the card like at the last point. Like, I've had enough. Or if I don't get it fixed there, then I'm going to take it to social media.
Right. Yeah, because then somebody will call you. But we are in a digital age, and I think that they may bank on that sometimes. It shows it on the website. As long as it shows it there and it registers with GM, they're like, hey, you got your certification.
Yeah, but the manufacturer that you're working for right now, you're just not pushing anything. They're not doing anything. What benefit do you see at the OE level? The OEMs set the tone with technology training requirements and the part supply chains and etc. Right?
Right.
Even in the independent level, I hear from shop owners that are using software or using, I want to say it's material that is supposedly OE specs, but it's not certified as OE specs. And then they can get in trouble, like the ADOS system. That has been a big discussion with Angry Bob.
Angry Bob.
With Angry Bob. That has been a big discussion in a lot of groups over legality. And that's the reason why I shot that one video stating that, certifications are important because with Sue Happy customers, this is a bigger issue. So if the manufacturer's not spending the time to send you to training and they don't care about it, that you just have anybody off the street working for Chrysler or Stellantis.
Right.
And then somebody comes in and they can sue if they get down to the wire. They can do that. The consumer can come after and kill the dealership.
So the thing, Chrysler has, just like GM, they've got their own curriculum. Okay. The ASCs are based on GM curriculum, basically. I have all of my manufacturer training. I just haven't recertified the ASCs. And, I will say that the ASCs typically, and I haven't taken them for a couple years. It's been a while. I have to recertify again. Typically, they're about 10 years behind in technology from a manufacturer, if I'm not wrong. And that's kind of where the ASCs were kind of designed for the aftermarket people. And if the aftermarket industry is typically 10 years behind in technology.
Well, what if I told you that some of it's using Pico technology now?
Sure. So that's another thing I was going to say is that it seems within the past few years, the aftermarket has leaped. They have evolved and they're gaining quickly on the manufacturers.
And they are. And there's a lot of them that I even talked to and discussed with issues that where we thought where ASCs were 10 years behind, now they're evolving and they're pushing forward. They see what's happening. Mm-hmm. And the aftermarket is like the scanner danner. And that aspect of the industry that has been pushing that information out. Now, only recently in the last couple of months have I seen that pushed in emerging issues as far as
really
using the picoscope, to diagnose problems and issues relative to compression. That is nothing that's ever really been pushed at the dealer OEE style until recently. Now I'm getting all the dealer techs. Well, in the last 6 months, I've been trying to put everything together with the picoscope, trying to gather leads, trying to set up a diag cart for them so they have everything without having to do any kind of tear down. They can understand and see everything in a printout in order to tell the consumer or feedback to either warranty without having to take something apart and just guessing. Other than a sound, a noise is typical lifter failure or anything of that nature.
Right. What I've seen with the Pico is manufacturers are using that as a way for you to gather data and send it to them.
Yes.
And one thing that I was really happy about is, and I don't remember because I took the Pico class for GM and I took it for Chrysler when they first came out with it. Mm-hmm. And GM has had the Pico for a long time.
Yes, they have.
They've had it for a long. They were the leading brand, I would say, with the Pico, and then Chrysler picked it up probably 5 years ago. And Chrysler is using it to test 3-phase motors in our electric vehicles and the transmissions. So we're doing coil winding testing with the Pico, and they want you to use that and send it to them, tech line or whatever, so that they can tell you what to replace. I don't know if GM's doing that or not, but
I've done that with NVH, looking at frequency and unknown variations and having discussions with not just a regular tech advisor, but somebody that's either beyond that ran into stuff that like back in the 80s. I'm like, oh, I used to have this Camaro that would do this, that, and the other, and it would happen at this type of frequency and we could catch it. And there's a lot of the instructors in the NVH class that would teach you how to freeze things with a timing light. And like that information, I don't ever hear that from any advisor now, especially through track or anything like that. So I'm teaching whatever the dying age that is not even there anymore, that they never saw. They never went through that kind of a class. They never had that type of instructor to tell them, like, I don't care what you see, what you ran through, or anything to do with this class whatsoever. We're going to hook all this stuff up, and I'm going to teach you how to do this the old school way and look at it this way without having to use all this. But you can use some of the newer technology incorporated with earlier technology in order to visually see it, other than looking at a waveform pattern.
right.
And it was fascinating. But I do agree that it's going to be the wave of the future, and they are listening to us and they're looking at the feedback on it. And even from this, they may even see that and take from it.
Yeah. You know what Chrysler used for NVH issues before they came out with the Picoscope?
Hose clamps?
We used a cerometer. You know what a cerometer is?
Cerometer.
Yeah. It's a little disc, okay? And it's got a little piece of wire. And you would twist it. It's like a 2-piece disc, and you twist it and the little piece of wire would come out. And you'd sit it on your center console if you had a vibration. Okay. And you would keep twisting it until you get the right vibration. And however far out you would twist it, you would record what the frequency of that vibration was. And then you could go to a chart and it would tell you whether it was a tire vibration, whether it was a driveline vibration. It was not a good system.
So did the disc have a set parameter to where
it had little notches and it had different frequencies, but it was literally just a little piece of wire that you sit on the center console and you're driving and it would just vibrate. And then you would record at what frequency it was vibrating. That's what they used. It was crazy. I still have one in my toolbox.
Well, I mean, it would make me seem to look at the same concept of putting a glass of water on the center console.
It's the same thing.
And looking how bad it was. That there's some of us that did stuff like that. Like we would look at the frequency over, like if it was bad enough to create ripples in the water, then that's not normal.
Right.
Kind of deal.
You got a broken belt or something.
Yeah. And some things nowadays like take that in depth because you can have more sounds and vibrations happening all at the same time and trying to diagnose something like that, where the OE side is just now coming in to using that kind of information and the diagnostic process on top of it. How much time does it take you to run through scenarios, look through different bulletins, sounds that people have ran into that have that kind of deal? And then you come to find out there's 5 different things wrong with the truck or the car or whatever it is we're working on. And
you have compounding issues.
And that is something that the aftermarket uses more. And why is the aftermarket spending more time into that than the dealer level? Why are we spending more? There's more training on the aftermarket side than there is on the dealer side. And now they're trying to implement that. And that's where, like, the accuracy of the data from the manufacturers are using the data and the information from the aftermarket. But now the aftermarket, I'm going to tell you, is advanced beyond then. They learned, they caught on, and they're using it. So there's fixes on the aftermarket that the dealer or the manufacturer, the OEs, don't even know about it, and they can't do anything about it. So then the dealer techs are kind of like either don't have the training, they don't have the ability to train on it, and now the OEs are trying to catch up with what's actually out there. And the guys that are coming into the dealer side don't know about it when other guys do.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of Chrysler technicians, they don't know about solenoid switch valve issues in 68 RFB transmissions. They just know that the valve bodies go bad, and they know that the accumulator plates blow out, but they don't know why. They don't have access to the information that we do in the aftermarket. And the sad part about this is the way that I've always thought about the dealerships in my mind, and what has driven me to become a good technician is, if the dealership can't fix it, then who's going to fix it? We're supposed to be the best.
Agreed.
We're supposed to be the absolute best when it comes to these cars, and I feel like sometimes we're not.
And that's the lack of training.
Yeah. And right now it's
advancement of either following a set of guidelines. So being at the dealer side and looking at, you had to follow these guidelines of process that you're going through a trouble tree. And if you get to it to a certain point, well, I've ran through all this stuff. I don't have an answer. So who do I reach out to? Who do you reach out to?
Tech line.
So then you're collaborating back and forth, and ideas, basically, you're in a think tank.
Right.
In a suggestion area. That's kind of where we all are on the outside already, but we rely on information. Maybe we missed a step. Maybe we didn't overlook this. And they are trying to give actual information and feedback and suggestion, because not enough information was provided in the case when it started, right?
Right.
So maybe you missed this one piece. So they may have suggested, and you go back and like, oh crap, I missed that. There it is. Stuff like that. So there's an aspect where on the dealer side that the technicians do not like tech. How do you feel on that?
All right, listen. I don't hate TAC. I think that they're a valuable resource when you really need help. And they have, like on the Chrysler side, they have access to service bulletins and information that we don't. When you type in the search and you're looking for different things, they have their own little bit of information. They see these failures all the time. So by the time I've gotten a hold of them, I've gone through the diagnostic tree, and I've tried, and I don't contact them very often, because what happens is they go back to step one. Well, did you check your power? And I'm like, well, yes, I did. That's why I got a hold of you, because I checked that and it's fine, and I still have a problem. And then it's like they're reading a script. They're going through service information, and they're just covering everything that you've already done, and running you around in a rabbit hole. I just had one recently that did this, and I was like, listen, you're wasting my time. I need to order this back. And he was like, well, stand by. And I was on standby for 3 days, and he was like, we're going to go ahead and order the battery for you. And I'm like, thank you. That's what I needed. And I a lot of the time it's good, but there are also times where I feel like maybe even the training from TAC is not the best either. But then try diagnosing a car over a computer,
Yeah, we can't do that. Even when consumers ask us questions. Hey, I've got this problem with my vehicle. I'm having this situation. What's the answer? And they want the quick fix. But the best thing to do is to have a conversation. And like, I can't tell you anything of a situation or scenario, but other than experience, only experience is going to tell and dictate what that conversation with the consumer is going to be, and how well you're going to communicate with the consumer, like explaining the value, like everybody wants. Chris Enright said it best today. When a consumer calls in and says, I want a quote for this type of repair, his comeback was that, well, most of the time when consumers actually call in, they've called like 5 other places at the same time. And he said that most of the time they laugh, because guess what? They've already called 5 other people with that situation. And then he starts to engage in the communication, and that's important. And I bring that up now to the writers that I have because of what Chris said. And I'm like, there are situations that I listen to that I'm not in the middle of whatever I'm doing and focusing on, and I'll hear bits and pieces that to provide that information and pass it along as a teaching moment. Like, this person needs full photo credit or video credit for this situation, but it's a point to where explaining the value because the consumer wants an answer. They don't want typically like, well, this guy can do it cheaper, or they're looking at prices and they're just trying to find the cheapest option, but trying to explain, they just want to know what's wrong with the vehicle. It's not that entirely of how much it costs. They just generally want to know what's wrong with it. And most of the time we've gotten to the point to where we'll have a conversation for about 30 minutes max on anything like that. And we'll start with a gauge of a price range, what it possibly could be. But we're guessing at that point, right? So we don't diagnose over the phone. We can only give an opinion, but until the vehicle is within our grasp, we can look at everything, do a visual inspection, go through what is actually going on. We can't tell you anything.
You know what I do? I have a crystal ball on my toolbox. The service riders, they come up and hey, what do you think is wrong with this car? And I'm like, I pick it up and I'm like, look into my crystal ball, because you're going to get as much information out of this as I know.
Sometimes I have riders that kick back from the other technicians, and sometimes even from myself, about what about this? And they'll start doing their own research. I'm like, you have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to explain everything and go everything with the consumer and explain how much it's going to cost and everything in detailed portion that I've already put everything together in a story to do your job. Do not kick back from me and tell me how to do my job.
Right.
And that's where a communication breakdown is so bad. And it does not even matter that it's on the OE level, but independent shops as well. And even the mobile technicians. Like if we put this as an aspect of a mobile technician to where they are having the conversation with the consumer. So put yourself in a position as a mobile technician right now. Consumer comes up, says, hey, I got a stability track light on. I've got a lightning bolt on and a check engine light, and the car barely moves. It doesn't want to accelerate. What's wrong with it? What's your response?
My response would be that I need to look at it. I need to hook up a code scanner. I need to actually see the car and see what's going on with it so that I could give you an answer.
How do you approach that as a mobile tech? And they're in front of you. They bring the vehicle to you. They reach out to you. You schedule an appointment and you show up. You've got that information that far. So when you show up, how do you explain everything to the consumer? Like you introduce yourself, you go over everything that was prior to explain to you, and you're as a mobile tech and the vehicle is there. Put this in that perspective.
So if I were, and I did, when I very first started out doing side work, I did basically mobile mechanic stuff, for like friends and family, people that I knew, friends of friends, whoever. And it would always be, I would show up and I would tell them, okay, it's going to be $50 for me to figure out what's wrong with the car, unless I find something and I need more time. I've got my code scanner. I can hook my code scanner up and we can figure out exactly what's going on. And then I can give you an estimate on what it's going to take to fix the car. Okay. And was never a problem getting somebody to say, okay, go ahead and figure out what's going on with it. And it just had like an auto estimate book that I got from Office Max. You can buy them anywhere online now, probably Amazon. You don't need a fancy computer or anything like that, but I would write up estimates. I'd call AutoZone, get parts estimates, write it up, put the tax and everything in there and give it to them. You treat it like it's a business, like an automotive repair, just like you would anywhere else.
But what happened if you did you have any kickback from a consumer about how expensive it was?
So back then I was doing it on the cheap. So no. I was doing it on the real cheap. I never had anything kicked back, but there were also people that knew me and respected me pretty well too, and they trusted my word. So if I said something was wrong, then they just were like, okay, go ahead and do it. I would say the only time that I've ever gotten any sort of kickback is working at a shop, the dealer, what have you. And then, the labor rates are pretty high.
Well, yeah, labor rates are pretty high, but there's metrics involved into that, and there's a reason
Sure.
why.
Yeah.
And we know that. 5 years ago, I made a statement with a friend of mine that was doing stuff for $50 an hour. And he made a deal and a contract with a fleet for $50 an hour. It didn't matter what the job was, maintenance, brakes, rotors, engine job, everything at $50 an hour. He's like, I'm booked out. I got stuff here I'm doing. He's working at the dealer and doing side work after work up to sometimes 10 o'clock at night and then go home, but had a family to go home to. But he's saying, like, I'm just, I'm booking it in and I'm wide open. I'm making money hand over fist and this, that, and the other. I'm like, I wonder why. Because you're so cheap.
Yeah.
You're working yourself to death.
I did that. I did that for a long time. And then one day I decided that I was tired of working myself to death. I missed a lot.
Yeah. I did that for a short period of time. It didn't last too long before I realized that, I'm losing time with family. I'm undervalued. I'm too cheap. But the consumer looks at that they look at the next person because of that value that they didn't value you. And did you ever have a point to where a consumer looked at one job that you were doing and then said it didn't take you that long to do that job, but you're quoting me out X amount of time to do this in this price, but it didn't take you that much longer to do that job. So why are you charging me the same thing for this job, but more for this job? Did you ever have an issue like that?
Yeah. There was one time, well, actually, when I had my own shop, I had a Duramax that I built an Allison transmission in, and he brought it to me. And he brought it to me that morning. I pulled the transmission out, had it apart, and rebuilt it the next day. I got it all back together, and I gave it back to him the next day at like 5 o'clock. And this guy was a tree guy, and he was about to go down to Florida for whatever storm that hit, and he needed it fast. So I put everything else I had to the side. I got it done real fast. It was a good, $5,000 that I charged him. And he comes back. He's like, I don't believe you rebuilt it. And I was like, sir, you can drive the car. I rebuilt the transmission. It moves now. It has drive. And he threw a fit. He threw a fit that it didn't take me 4 or 5 days to get that transmission done. And it wasn't easy to convince him that I did until he actually paid the bill and took the car.
Dang. Yeah. Some aspects of that where we're working overnight, sometimes till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to do the stuff like that to make it work the next day because they're out of town or they need to get on the road because they need to feed their families. And so do we. Mm-hmm. And then they don't believe you.
Yeah. I had a newborn baby at that point. My wife was at home with my 2 kids, and I was trying to make that work,
Yeah. Yeah. People don't see the value that when we put that extra effort into it. And there's another reason why I'm trying to teach some of the ASAP students that, now might be a prime time for you to do side work and friends and family. And there's a limit of when to cut it off. In the early years, it'll get to that way. And then as you progress, as you get older, you get to the point to where, you have a life, you have wife, kids, you have a house, you have a mortgage, you have everything under the sun to take care of. And then you still have people that will try to come up to you and try to ask you a million questions about their vehicle. I've gotten to the point where I shut my phone off and I have deleted almost every friend that I have.
Yep.
Because of it.
Or about as good as a friend that has a truck. You'll hear from everybody when they got a car problem, but nobody calls you, just to check up on you. I have 2 friends, 2 close friends that will call me to say, hey, what's up? I play video games with them on the weekend. That's what I do with them. But I mean, other than that, every single person in my phone, besides my wife and kids, those people call me for car work.
Yeah. I've gotten to the point to where if I get a text message saying that when you get a second, call me, might take a couple of days or maybe sometimes a week before I get back to them. But if I have somebody that will text me that and then the next day blow my phone up, I don't know who you are anymore. I've gotten to that point. I'm like, listen, I got a job from 8 to 5 every day. If you got a problem or an issue, take it to a shop.
Yeah.
I have gotten to that point. I am too old to deal with this stuff.
No. I used to pull transmissions in my driveway. I won't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's not something we should do anymore. We're getting too old.
No, my back is, I know that I'm not as old as you, but I've been doing this for a long time. And after about 31, things started hurting real bad.
34 was my cutting.
Was it?
I'm 10 years older than that now. Like when I hit 34, I was like, holy crap, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, you got hit by a bus. That's what it feels like. I have
All
to
right.
I have to get a new pillow because my shoulders hurt when I sleep.
Well, let's get back onto the subject. The independent shops and the mobile technicians. These folks often feel out of the OEM level info like TSB, security gateway access, training, like the independent side. Like back when you were not working for the dealer or you were working for Firestone. How did you feel in that aspect of the level of training that you had, even though what they were pushing for?
So as far as getting OE level information for repairing vehicles?
Yeah, like TSB, like you'd used
Yeah.
all data in Mitchell or Identifix.
I would say that the aftermarket has done a pretty good job of the right to repair and having that information available. It's really the issue that you have is having the people that are using it to utilize it properly. And I know that, so I'll give you an example. I'm a Chrysler technician, okay? I've used YTech a lot. I know exactly how to use it. I know how flawless it is. Now, when I owned my shop, I used my GM scan tool, the J pass-through device for YTech because I needed to flash a car. And let me tell you, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life when it came to Chrysler. And the reason was they did not help me with getting everything registered. They made it very difficult. And the version of the scan tool that I was using was half of what it was at the OE level. And I know for a fact that they do this on purpose because they're trying to discourage people from doing that. But I would say as far as like getting TSBs and information like that, Protoman and AllData, they do a very good job. And that's when you come up with, you'll have somebody bring you a service bulletin to the dealership. Like I found this online, but it doesn't apply to their vehicle. It's only for like a small snippet of vehicles that were manufactured. So just getting people to use the information properly can be difficult, but also the dealers shouldn't say deal. The manufacturers do make it a little more difficult on the aftermarket side to be able to do things that you would do at OE level, in my opinion.
I agree, because anybody that comes through with a Stellantis product that I have to use any part of YTech, I tell them take it to the dealer. It's going to be cheaper for you to take it to them and have them do a programming, or if a module has to be replaced, then you have to go through the programming side and then do a proxy or realignment through the entire system. It has taken me 8 hours to do one module one day.
On the aftermarket side,
Yes,
it takes me 10 minutes with OE, and it didn't cost me a dime.
Yeah, and there's most people that have brought information to me, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this. I know the issue. We've already done some research, and I ran through the scenario with him. Like, I think you're on the right path with this. And like, if you brought it to me, or you brought it through the dealer or the independent shop, I'm gonna call somebody out. I got a programmer that I'm gonna call out. It's gonna be a heck of a lot cheaper, or I'm gonna send it to the dealer, because like I don't have that clientele base that comes in that's going to be a Stellantis product.
Right.
Or
It's
cheap
not
price.
worth it to spend the money on it. Like the price of paying for the license and the software is kind of ridiculous unless you do it every day.
Agreed, but there are people in the aftermarket that make it a little bit on the cheaper side or more simplified. I just not have had that conversation or
So
tried to dive into that yet.
I was gonna say there is a scan tool that I want to try, and it's that the Autel. Autel has a scan tool that they have a J programmer that you can program keys. and it's all located centrally in the scan tool. And I think you can do all of the subscriptions and everything through the scan tool, and apparently it works very well. But it's like $2,000, and I'm like, I don't want to buy that, but I really want to try the scan tool.
Snap-on is pushing that now with their new latest update, that they're
Really?
including auto auth and everything, to where you don't have to pay for that subscription to the gateway and stuff like that. And I just told the rep, I'm like, listen, I don't think I'm gonna spend the money yet. I'm just gonna hang on and figure out what's going on, because I know that like Honda and everybody else is kind of getting on board with that portion of it, but like sticking with Stellantis directly through the pass through the device. So what I would call it is an MPVI if it was HP tuners or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
it's a micropod.
So it's a micropod.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten into that because I don't have a lot of Chrysler products that even come through, even at George's shop at GNR Automotive. So we don't have a lot of that to get into that side of the tuning. And so it's not cost effective for us to deal with that just yet.
Did you know that you could use your GM MDI to do it?
Yeah. But I don't technically own the MDI2 that I do have.
Oh, okay.
I have the J Box 2.
Yeah, I used the
Yeah, I've got, so you can either use the J Box 2 was the earlier version, MDI 2. Now you can use like all the way up to, what is it? It is they call it either Global A, Global B, and Global C, but Global C is a different level to where the EV side is. That's what I'm trying to remember. It's a different name. Like Chuck would call it Global C, but it's something else. I remember it later. But in that aspect of that information to where it's available to the outside public, all of that is. It doesn't matter if you have a subscription or not. Like bulletins are all over the place that people can look up, but do the aftermarket spend the time to where they run into an issue or a problem that may be related to something? Do they do searches, bulletin searches? Do you think that they do that more?
I think they do now more than they used to. Now, it's been a while since I've been in the aftermarket. When I had my shop, I used ProDemand, and I did search for service bulletins using that. And then it all comes down to training too. I mean, you kind of get drilled, working at a dealership, part of the diagnostic process, looking for service bulletins. There's always some sort of information out there that you don't know about. If you've got an issue, you check for service bulletins first before you try to fix anything. And I think that's a training thing. I think the aftermarket needs to be trained to, okay, I have a car with a misfire on cylinder 3. Let's look for service bulletins, and it seems that they probably are starting to do that more now than they used to.
What about recalls and coverages, special coverages?
Those are
Do you think
Google warriors.
do they look at that? Do you
Yeah,
think
sure.
that the independent side dives into that?
Yeah, I think so. We've had a lot of people come to the dealership because they found a recall that, pertained to their vehicle. A lot of the time, they're like airbag recalls. They've got an airbag light or something, and they think that the recall is going to fix it. We see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, but is it something that the independent side has explained to the consumer that, this is the problem, this is what we found, but there's a coverage that you don't have to pay for if you take it to the dealer? Or would it be a situation where the independent side would charge them for the diagnostic, which at the independent level, charge for their time, yes. But if they realize that it's something that's covered under a recall situation or a special coverage, and they refer them back to the dealer, I understand that time is money and their expertise is important, and the consumer, how that would be, I want to say, explained or communicated with the consumer, that the value of the time that, we look over everything and we just saved you a bunch of money by not charging you for this repair that the manufacturer will. Or does the independent level just not charge the consumer and say it's on the house, go fix it, go take it to the dealer?
So In the case of a special coverage, I don't think that the aftermarket would have access to look that up. I don't think they do. Or if they do, it would be very hard to find. And that they would have to almost call the dealership with a VIN number and be proactive about trying to see if there is a special coverage. Now that, I guess that would come down to a case of morals. Morally, what kind of business person are you? Yes, you spent time, but are you trying to take care of this customer? This repair is going to be covered under a special coverage. Are you going to charge them? Personally, I wouldn't. If I haven't spent a bunch of time trying to diagnose a problem, if I've only looked for service bulletins and called the dealership with a VIN to see if anything was covered for the issue that I was having, I wouldn't charge them personally. But, there are a lot of people out there that are, it's a business, I guess it just depends on what kind of business person you are.
Correct. And it could be a situation to where, we're trying to gain a new customer. We're trying to help them out. But the technician just spent their time going through the diagnostic process, researched bulletins, they did full pinpoint test to find a failure point, and then they set up an estimate. At that point, is it the technician's job to figure that out if it's something that's either covered or not, or is it the writer's job at the independent level? That's my next question.
Oh, that is definitely the writer's job. And the reason why I say that, because when I had my shop, I ran it as if it were a dealership. I had writers and they had jobs. Okay. They had jobs. Their job was to manage, just like anybody else would, the cars and the customers and get information for me and my technicians. And the same at a dealer level, looking for, you have the car come in, you plug it in, you get the VIP and everything else that you have. It shows all the coverages. The writer needs to communicate this with the technicians. Now, in this case where you have a technician that's gone through and diagnosed a problem, and then you call the dealership and you find out there's a special coverage. If I were the business owner, I would pay the technician internally an hour, and then I wouldn't charge the customer, because I can guarantee you that if the customer found out that you diagnosed their problem and then you found out that it would be covered for free, they would probably come back. I think you more than likely would have gained a customer for life.
I agree with that situation. That would be a point to where if there's a manufacturing defect and I'm in an independent shop, I know the technician took his time to do that and he figured out everything. If I'm paying the technician, if I'm paying the writer, and they're both fully trained and they did the right thing, they ran through everything and both of them found out that this is something that the manufacturer is going to cover, and tell the customer that, this is the problem, this is the issue, this is what we ran through, and telling them the value into everything. And hey, guess what? We found out that the manufacturer has a special coverage for X amount, and your vehicle has still covered, and there's no charge, but you're still paying the technician and you're still paying the writer. The other aspect of the automotive side is going to say that, is that a discount? Did we just discount the consumer that came in?
What do you mean, did you discount the consumer?
So consumer brought a vehicle in. Shouldn't be under anything under base warranty. It shouldn't be anything under powertrain warranty. They confirm that. They look at everything. They know the stipulation. And then it's okay to be there and not at a dealer level, right? They bring it in, they sign off on the repair order to pay X amount to check the vehicle out for a diagnostics. When they found out, technician spent the time, the writer spent the time. How much are we losing in there if we just gave away what we signed off on for, to pay for every bit of time, to pay for the writer, for the technician, and for that pay to be down? Even though that we gain the consumer for life, did we lose anything, or did we gain anything? That's what I'm kind of looking at. Like, did I take to the point to where I'm going to take the money out of my pocket, walk around the counter, and hand it back over to say it's on the house? I'm going to take care of this. Go to the dealer. They're going to take care of it free. And what if you never see them again?
Well, I would put my morals over money. any day of the week, personally. And the way that I would look at it is that person is probably going to have some sort of story about their experience with you at that business, correct? And in the future, if they have a friend or a relative or somebody that needs some sort of work, word of mouth is the most powerful advertisement you could have. Okay. So they're going to say to their friends, they could have charged me for this repair, and instead of charging me, they sent me to the dealership. I got it fixed for free. Go to them. They're good people. I mean, how often do you hear in the automotive industry, that mechanic's a hack, those people try to take advantage of you, that guy screwed me over? No, this person's like, those are good people. They could have got me, and they didn't. And I think that I would put more value there in the possibility of having somebody say something nice about my business and promote me, over $180 in whatever time you have in that bay. Personally.
Agree with that. Even though that there's part of the people that would not, I agree with it. I agree with that. To me, that's where there's a disconnect that even Alex even understands, coming from a small town where sales and service would take care of the customer. They would go over everything with the vehicle at the at the OE level before they even sold a vehicle. And service would even be a part of that sale and go over everything where, how much it would cost, the maintenance. And I've been a part of something that's really important that I wish was still around today, which would be a customer appreciation day. So I worked for a Chevrolet, Cadillac, Hummer, Buick, GMC, Saturn, Pontiac. They had everything at this one manufacturer. And every Saturday throughout the week, that there would be one technician out of 36 of us that would revolve and take one Saturday out of the week that we worked, and after hours everything was shut down, and all the consumers that purchased a vehicle during that week, they would invite them out, have dinner. They would sit down with all the riders, all the parts personnel, or a designated parts personnel, service manager, dispatcher, and one technician. And they would get to see every aspect, and we would set up certain brand new vehicles, and go over the highlights of the vehicles that they just purchased out of all the people that were there. And there sometimes would be 30 people. And this was a large dealership. And this was really good. And they could ask all of us a million questions that was never gone over, or that the sales could not have fully covered, that they would have all these questions about how to maintain and take care of the vehicle. And I don't see that anymore.
No. I will say, Jaguar Land Rover, their salespeople were very good. Like, they would pull the car into the service drive, and they would have the customer in there, and they would go over all the features and everything with them. Jaguar Land Rover, I think, in my opinion, they set the bar as far as selling cars and explaining things to their customers. That's something they did right, and rightfully so. These people are spending $180,000 on a car. I feel like in the mass-produced vehicle brands, that kind of stuff has gone away. And you have a lot of people. You ever see a customer come into the dealership where they have a concern about their lighting or an interior feature, and it's all because they don't understand how to use it. So you spend an hour, like, the lights turn on like they're supposed to. I don't know what they're complaining about. And you go talk to the rider. They call the customer comes in. Hey, will you show me what you're talking about? And then they show you, and you're like, that's how it's supposed to work.
Or that the customer hit the lift gate button and shut it off, or set it at 3/4 and it only opens up halfway, or not all the way entirely, and they bring it in for the concern. But that should be a problem that would be addressed by the rider. It should never make it to the technician. Something of that nature should never make it past the rider. And I mean, that should be something at the independent level as well. And it's most of this is like fully lack of communication, lack of training, lack of understanding of where we're at and why the consumer sees things in the wrong light.
Yeah. I'm going to talk to you about something that I don't agree with right now as far as communication goes. There is the way that some of the dealerships that I've worked at and the current one that I work at works. They want to keep you in your stalls as much as possible, right? That's the idea. They want you to be as productive as possible, stay in your stalls, and we use a program to talk to our service writers in our parts department, like an instant messenger. Okay. But if you're a technician and you're working on cars, you're not at your computer all day and there's no alarm or nothing. So when things get approved, you don't know about it unless you're constantly checking your computer. Or if you ask a question, you don't get a response if you're constantly working. Or what they'll do is they'll page you to go to the front to talk to the service writers, but typically what they want you to do is stay in your stall. And I feel like there is a communication disconnect there. I feel like when the service writers aren't coming back and actively asking you questions about things and getting your attention or telling you, hey, I got your job approved, I feel like we have lost time and we're losing the human element of that as well.
I see that because we use AutoPoint.
That's what we use.
All right.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, I see that. Even sometimes myself, like I'm caught up with a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. I've got other techs that will run through 10 to 12 cars and diagnose all of them the same day. It'd be just a little bit simple stuff, nothing major. Just he's spending, I wouldn't say 10 to 12. He diagnosed 8 vehicles in one day, and they're all sitting outside just waiting on answers. How do you coordinate who comes first? Whoever gets approved first? Whatever lights up on the screen first? That's the part that I don't like.
You know what it turns into? It turns into who's the loudest. I know you know what I'm talking about. Which customer's the loudest?
No, it's usually what writer's the loudest.
Well, I know, but every time it's the writers are like, oh, this customer's up my butt. And my boss is yelling at me, Dustin, we need you to get this cam and lifters done by tomorrow because this guy's mad and he's got a lawyer.
What are you going to do? 28 days, right?
Yeah.
Even I understand that as a consumer.
Right.
If all my stuff broke down right now, guess what? I gotta go rent a vehicle because anything that mine breaks down is probably going to be expensive because it has 400,000 miles on it.
Yep.
But I maintain it. I take care of it as much as I can to the point to where I can. But if all of a sudden it just throws a rod outside the block, which I've never seen an LM7 do that, but if it ever happens, then what? I have no choice.
Yeah.
But I mean, like brand new vehicle, 300 miles.
300 miles, 6.2 that just locked up, fresh off the truck.
And what do? You make noise.
That's true. But also, I feel like there should be some sort of understanding there too. These things take time.
I agree. And there's one, like I even told you about, that I couldn't say nothing that I could have helped. And she made enough noise that I heard it. I heard it every single day. I heard it every single day. If I hear it every single day on the FYP, that is something. And I had to wait. I couldn't say nothing. I'm like, I want to help this consumer so bad. And I could. But, legalities are in place, stuff like that. I get it. We're trying to help everybody as much as we can. My hands are tied. And what was done to her was wrong. It was how it was handled. It was not the fact that, I got a brand new vehicle and my 10-speed just went all to hell and they're trying to sell me into a new car.
I've seen that a lot.
That is the wrong way to go about it.
They're like, pick any car you want. We'll get you out of this one.
Yeah. But she was already so upside down. They knew better.
Yeah.
You can't push them so far and then trying to take more money from them. It's one thing trying to help somebody out that they know, or they're at a point to where, the vehicle they have is worn out and they're a little bit upside down, not major upside down. And that's fine. But as long as they're the ones that sign the paperwork. But if it's a new vehicle and, they're at that point and you want that customer to come back, right? You just sold them a brand new vehicle and something major happened to where they can't drive it, you're going to do everything you can to bend over backwards to fix that one. I don't care if there's 10 other in line. You're going to set the tone with the consumer. You're going to explain what's going on, what's happening, and you're going to do everything within your power to fix and remedy the problem before it gets out of hand and she goes out into the parking lot and pulls out her phone and 2 million people see it. And then they blast you on social media.
Yeah. That is, we're going back to morals over business.
Yeah. Morals over business. Independents should see it the same way. You bring in and you do a service, you do a repair, and God forbid a brand new part fails and it causes massive engine damage. It's under part warranty. Here's a situation. This just happened, and maybe it was like a day or two later. We'll put this into a same relative situation as a brand new vehicle. And how do you put that into a perspective with the consumer and trying to help them at the same time that, a repair was made and they're wanting to blame you that you made a mistake. You blew my car up. Now you need to buy a new engine. But it's under warranty. Things happen. Even brand new parts fail, and we do everything that we can. In that aspect, it's how you handle the situation. It'd be no different, right? So are you trying to build a solution? So are we trying to build a solution here?
Sure. How do we go about doing that?
How do we go about doing that? So until the only thing that I'll take from this is until everybody's on the same page, there is no solution. There's only what we can take from everybody else's situation and understand in that learning process to move forward. So the more conversations that we do have, the other people that see that and they learn from that, we're the ones that made the mistakes in life. The next generation coming in and seeing that can either sit and laugh and think that it's an entire joke, but it's not. Because one day that they may not even have anything to come in to walk into if it is something that they want to do. Or they're not even taught the process and they get frustrated. So solutions to a problem are the networking side and working together from the OE level side down to the independent side of the mobile side, down to the consumers. If all of them were on the same page to understand, then none of this would be an issue. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. You wouldn't have to be worried about your pay. You wouldn't have to worry about the lack of communication that you have with your rider or your fellow colleagues or your manager. You wouldn't be on social media.
That's probably true.
So maybe taking that to a point.
Yeah.
Because if they don't want to look at things in the right, they think that they're stuck in a position that this is how it's worked for X amount of years. I'm not going to change. Take a moment.
That is the problem. That is the problem right there. It's been this way for X amount of years. We're not going to change it. Well, listen, I would kill for pre-COVID times right now. Okay. Because I made a lot of money and things were a lot better back then. Things have changed rapidly and we have to change the way that we approach things without losing who we are. I'm chasing a dollar every day, but I'm not going to sacrifice my morals and myself for that dollar. Okay. I'm not going to screw people over. I refuse. Which is like, as far as, okay, we're flat rate. I would rather take the extra time to diagnose things properly and finish the job without missing bolts and missing trim pieces. And I would rather take the time to do it right than have to take the time to fix it later because I messed up.
So if we didn't have politics, regulation, or anything to do with taxes from state to state, and it would be entirely a nationwide, every single job that would be specific to that vehicle would be one set dollar amount.
It probably would be.
And then the technician was on a salary plus commission. The incentive for the technician to be or spend more time to doing training, to learn more, that would be the side of it to look at as far as advancement or efficiency. I want to learn more because I can make more and I'm going to get paid more for being that efficient, but still being thorough and putting out quality work at the same time. That's where the flat rate system would die. Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, like, I feel like there would be a lot of things that would change for the better if we weren't worried about pay all the time. Like if we came in, okay, because when you start the day, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I have to flag 8 hours today. How am I going to get there? Fastest way possible. How am I going to peck these cars in an order where I can make money? What shortcuts can I take? If you were just worried purely on, okay, I know I'm getting paid. I'm not stressed about the pay difference from last week to this week. I can take the time to fix this car accurately and properly and make sure that everything is the way that it should be. That would be just one giant weight of just the world off your shoulders, in my opinion. And it would allow us to concentrate more on the job and less on how am I going to buy groceries this week. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
I mean, have you ever had Christmas time? Okay. Christmas time's hard, right? Yeah. There have been times where, I've had people tell me you need to budget your money better. Well, how do you budget when you have a pay period of 2 weeks and you bring home 8 hours for 2 weeks? You worked 60, and then the next pay period will be 40, and then the next one will be 20. How do you budget that?
Bit hard.
Yeah. And then you spend.
And that's where that it doesn't matter what you signed your contract. I don't care if you're making $30 an hour to $50 an hour. If you only turn 8 hours in 2 weeks, that $50 an hour doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Nope. You could make $100 an hour. 8 hours don't mean anything.
You used to make it efficient at a point where I was on a guarantee at $35 an hour with an R&R guy running 3 bays. We would make it to where we would try to push as much as we could. And there was one week where I sold, don't laugh and don't let your jaw drop, but I sold 13 6L80 transmissions in 2 days. And I had them all done by Friday.
I believe that.
The government took every damn dime that I had out of it because I did that.
You were like, it was worth it. It wasn't worth it at that point. I think the best pay period I had at a dealership was 150 hours. And it was literally like $200 more than what I would normally make on average after taxes.
Some of the guys that we kind of sat down and figured out like 50 something was the limit. That's it. Like there's an over efficiency. And I know some dealers that will do like an extra dollar an hour if you hit 50 and an additional 2 hours if you hit 60. I'm like, I wouldn't. What am I doing? You're trying to give me that additional bonus for an additional dollar an hour to hit between 50 and 60, but you just cost me money by trying to make the technician that more efficient. It's a waste of time after 50.
Right. But they're like, but you could be making the company more money. Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, there's a point where efficient is too efficient.
Yeah.
And then that's where quality lacks. In my opinion.
Sure. It's easy to miss things when you're rushing through. I remember when I worked for GM, I could do 2 6L80s in a day, remove, build, and install if I really hustled. And sometimes you'd miss some things. I caught it, but like you're rushing through things, and it's easy to miss things when you're just pushing through as fast as you can.
Forgot to hook up the manual valve or misalign the neutral safety switch, or you forgot the detent spring and it's sitting on the table.
Yeah, detent spring was always I'd get it in, I'd fill it, get it running, go to put it in drive, and I'm like, gotta pull the pan off.
Yeah, that was a point where I'm like, all right, if it happens more than twice, then we need to have a sit down conversation and slow down. And that's where it could be either a push situation from the amount of appointments that are coming in and pushback from a rider or a 911 situation. Something happened out of the place. That's where that type of work needs to be in a workflow pattern, and it needs to be steady, constant, and in motion. Because even one little hiccup, we got to stop the whole assembly line, right? So it's the same thing with like sales pushing vehicles without communicating service capacity or limitations. It's no different than doing that. So workflow misalignment is more of the biggest thing that an issue. The workflow misalignment. So if we design a workflow and then one thing pulls out, what's going to happen?
Falls like dominoes. Yeah. You ever have parts coming, all your parts coming at once? So your 8 cars that you diagnosed that day. Okay. You get in first thing in the morning, you look at your workload and you're like, okay, if I do it in this order, that is the optimum way of me doing things, right? Manager comes down. I got this customer at my butt. You need to do this one first. And you're like, well, that just destroys my whole day.
I've gotten to the point where I tell them it's not my problem. They're asking the wrong technician. Yeah. And I've had it happen. So I have a car that is actually sitting in a bay that went to several different technicians and even one of my ASAP students. And Alex talked about this on the last podcast. And I didn't even know that he even looked at it. All I'm being told is that it's been looked at it a bunch of times and we're just trying to help this lady out, figure out what's wrong with it. It just randomly happens. And I've seen the videos on it. All the codes that will randomly pop up here and there. It'll be different one way. It'll be the next time it comes in, it's a different set of codes. I'm like, all right, so I'm going to go drive this car through as many conditions as I can to get it to act up. And I've asked multiple times, does it happen when it rains? No, it doesn't happen when it rains. It only happens when I have the AC on for a long period of time. The vehicle sits and idles, but always with the AC on. I'm like, okay, so I got to drive this thing with the AC on, and I let it sit. And I drove it for 2 hours. And then it was just some free time that I had. It was nothing that I'm like trying to get into. I'm like, all right, this has been multiple times. Let's try to figure out the root cause. Like, what is the symptoms that get it to actually happen? And I've spent some time into it. And I've finally told the writer, I'm like, listen, I can get it to happen. It's not going to happen. It's going to be on my free time if you're trying to help them out. Otherwise, we're going to start with like, I hit the clock, and when I figure it out, you're going to charge them that time to do that because my time ain't free. So always dropped it off on a Thursday and picks it up the next day. They even had a service lane manager try to get involved. I'm going to go drive it and try to get it to act up. I mean, I don't need you to get it to act up. I need to get it to act up. I need to see how it's happening. So I need to understand where I'm going with it. You know what I'm saying? So that's a workflow process. Takes the vehicle. I've got all these other cars in line, have everything lined up. They just bring me the car and the work order and the keys, just sitting on my toolbox. Never saw the service advisor. You know what I did? I went straight to Multipoint and I put in 4 hours or I don't touch the car. 10 minutes later, it gets green lit. I don't even think she sold it to the customer, to be 100% honest.
And they're probably just like, please figure it out.
So it sat there. It literally sat there for 4 days before I got to it. She kept asking me, when are you going to get to it? When are you going to get to it? I'm like, when I get to these other ones, you just drop this out of nowhere. And this is a stance that I've started making that I will not. And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid anymore to sit here and say, you know, these people were here first. I understand that this person's situation's a big situation and it's been here multiple times. But if I'm going to put my full effort into this vehicle, I'm going to be fully caught up to the point where I get to it. And when it's down, it's down. That car's been sitting down. It's still in pieces, waiting on the glass company to come fix the windshield because it's been raining nonstop here and there. And I can't take it outside because it'll all happen and get flooded again. I mean, that is the thing that what you're talking about, that is a reality. And I would suggest to you that if it happens again, it's not my problem. I didn't break it. Buy it, right?
Right.
This is your condition to manage and dispatch properly and have that conversation with the consumer, or even understand the workload of the technician that you're trying to bring to that may have the experience level only to fix and understand what's going on. and convey that to the consumer. That's the problem. Sales pushing vehicles without communication service capacity or limitations.
Yep. Or trying to push things in without a Wii.
That happens too.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a Wii in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Usually that goes to used cars, but that's the bigger issue that I see on the OE side. And then on the independent side, it's been a while since you've been out of the independent side, but running your shop and your business in between those times, how would you see what you've taken from the OE side and what you did in the independent side, and then being a shop owner and the mistakes that you're making?
So it was pretty stressful. You know what I mean? When you get pretty busy and everybody wants to talk to the owner. Every time there's a problem, they want to talk to the owner. Well, the owner was the transmission builder too. So, I was spread a little thin. I feel like I probably should have hired the right people to manage things for me so that I could focus on what I had to do. It was hard. It was hard to, and there were times, I did it to myself where, I can understand trying to put out the fire customers because I was constantly trying to rearrange my workload to take care of the customers that were the loudest because they were up my butt and on my cell phone at 2 a.m. trying to get a hold of me to see what's going on with their car.
2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, it was rough. When I first started, I had my cell phone number plastered on the front of my building because that was my business phone too.
Instead of having two separate numbers, as far as
Yeah.
like the business phone stays on the business.
Yeah, no, it was. I fixed that real quick.
There was a point where I had to do the same thing, and then I had to figure out what do not disturb mode was, and then had two phones. Even today, like I have fake accounts that post a poster that had the phone number on it, and they're not real. Those accounts are not real, and people will see that, and I'll get phone calls every single day.
Oh, they post your phone number on the fake accounts?
Yeah, because they're my old video.
Okay, yeah. Like Brandon Teach.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
fake one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's another performance transmissions, but it's an odd one. I'll catch it here and there in my reels, oddly, and I'll go straight to the comment section and start talking with the commenters left and right. I'm like, this is not supposed to be on Facebook. You can't understand the comment back to this. This is a TikTok video. It's not even supposed to be on Facebook. It was way before that stuff. But talk about compliance and standardization. So what you ran into being the shop owner and the builder trying to conform or be standardized in the industry, in the transmission industry. We'll pull into the transmission side. How hard was that versus other shops?
I guess I don't understand your question.
A standard of quality, price, value.
So that was hard. That was extremely hard. And I can tell you that at first I severely undercut myself because I was trying to compete with the guys that were building 4L60s for $650. And
Shops?
no, just there. So for my area, we have a lot of guys that build 4L60s apparently. We have a lot of just Joe Schmoes. And they build 4L60s for $650. And I opened up my trans shop and I was trying to compete with them. And then after a while, I decided that they weren't my competition, that I couldn't afford to compete with them with overhead. And, so I raised my prices.
Mm-hmm.
I should have done it sooner. I will also say that learning the aftermarket side of all the transmissions that I was building was a learning curve. Like I said, with the 6 RFE, I remember the very first one I did at my shop. I had a solenoid switch valve issue that I didn't know about. I had been doing these transmissions for years, and I had no idea that that was a problem until I got a Sonac, ATRA. There's a lot of really good information out there that I just didn't know about and that I was learning about. And it was a learning curve. It took a while to really get all of that information and to be standardized as a transmission shop. And learning all that information. Sonax was, I remember when I first discovered Sonax, I thought I hit the holy grail. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I started off with Transco. I didn't know anything about Sonics.
Really?
Yeah, I knew of nothing but strict transgo. So I was doing 4L60s like pretty cheap, basically what you said at the price, but that was not like too wide open to the public. That was something that um one of the guys that I worked with at the dealership had his little shop at the house, and had a friend that, like, truck went down, I got to get the kids back and forth to school, stuff like that, that didn't have a lot of money. This was nothing to where, like, this is a consumer that we're publishing this information or putting out there that, hey, I'm doing 4L60s for $650. Come and get them all day long. Nothing like that. I mean, it was just like a little bit here and there. It never got anything large. And then that's where I became the transmission driveline tech. And I started studying the basics of any kind of hydraulic theory, looking through hydraulic diagrams, looking at things. And I'm like, you know what? I know a little bit of the transgo stuff. And it was introduced with me by Richard Pritch, which is Precision Transmissions on YouTube. Have you ever seen Richard? Richard and Trent? So just listening and watching him for a long period of time, I started looking at little things, a couple of things I don't agree with. And I found out, well, this stuff was published in an ATSG book. That's why it's there. I wonder why he gets a bad rap, because it's published information.
Right.
But he doesn't know, he doesn't understand. Nobody reached out to say, hey, anything to him. And I believe that was a bigger thing, that why I thought that he was a bad person. Once I started seeing in the professional side that that's not right. And now I feel bad that I ever said anything, because I didn't take the time to look at that. And it took a lot of that to get through, and started looking. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to start reading books. I'm going to just jump into the industry full fledged with everything that I knew for approximately 4 years, and some experience in the past decade over that. But everything, being doing that for 4 years straight, and then dissecting everything, root cause and problems and issues that I've ran into, and then doing research on the aftermarket side before I even went to anything on social media and started saying something against somebody else or just making a suggestion. But I'm like, what you saw and what you ran through, because you didn't know, you didn't see that until you ran into it, and you were making all these mistakes. That's kind of why I try to get out there and put out information, even though consumers say that, that $35 part in that 9-speed. I'm like, just put a transmission in it. You're not here with me. You're not there with the vehicle.
Right.
Instead of replacing a $900 valve body, I can put a $160 zip kit in it, go through the entire valve body, new separator plates, and put it back together, but it's going to cost you $3,000.
Right.
Instead of $9,000. It takes time. It takes experience. And what you went through, I want to say a lot of people went through that. You're not alone.
Yeah, it was rough. But I was you see that you're losing money. I was losing money for a while with that, with the comebacks and the time that I was spending on it. And I hate comebacks. Typically don't have comeback. I'm not going to say I don't ever have comebacks, because everybody has comebacks, but I'm pretty good about fixing and diagnosing cars. And that was humbling. It was a very humbling experience that I had. My attitude with it was, what am I doing wrong? I need to fix it. How am I going to fix it? And I think that was when I started seeing your videos online. And then I think you had mentioned, actually, I'm pretty sure you're the one that turned me on to ATRA. And I was like, I'm going to see what this is all about. And I joined, and I was like, there's a plethora of information here. Like, this is amazing. It was eye opening. I didn't know that part of the aftermarket industry existed, and it helped a lot.
People today don't even know that it exists. The Acadia that I sat and waited 3 days for an adjuster to come out on, we're sitting there talking about stuff, and he's like, I got 3 shops that I own that are up north, and he lives in Columbia, South Carolina, and he's trying to sell the other shops and do a whole bunch of motorcycle stuff down in Columbia. But you're an adjuster. I'm like, I feel like this guy is trying to sell himself. Something doesn't sound right. And he was going through everything. He's like, yeah, this fluid don't smell good and it don't look good, but it's not as worse as it could be. And I'm looking at it. It looks grainy. It looks like there's fresh material in it. I mean, there's 70,000 miles on it, no maintenance. I know what a 9-speed's going to look like. It's normal. I mean, it flushed the system and it worked fine and rebuilt whole valve bodies. I bet you the car would not have an issue because he shut it off when it happened, not when just continue to drive the car in the condition that it's in. So situation like that, and then brought up the fact that I know a lot of people in the Automotive Transmission Rebuilders Association. I know people in the Automotive Service Tire and Alliance, and I'm a member of PRI. Try to get him a little bit more educated into what I kind of do, because he was trying to force me to stay at the dealership when I had to go deliver a 6L80 to George. And I'm like, I've been waiting on your ass for 3 days in the back of my mind. You're going to sit here and tell me, make sure that, come on, man, just stay 30 minutes. I'll be 30 minutes. I'm driving from Columbia, this, that, and the third. He said, why don't you get a porter to go deliver the transmission? I said, because I'm the goddamn owner of the fucking business. I'm the one that built the transmission that I build for other shops. I have deliveries that I make. You do not dictate what I do at the dealership. The dealership does not dictate what I do at the dealership. You're best believe that you're not going to dictate anything, that anything's going to happen. I wanted to go off and tell him that so bad, but I didn't.
I was like, you go. Look at you.
I was on a 3-way phone call with the rider. The service rider called me, had the balls to call me 3 minutes before 12 o'clock, which is lunchtime, where I've already got everything planned out and I'm going. And luckily I was walking out to my truck when he called me. And if I hadn't want to sit here and wait to get an answer on this damn car that's been sitting on my lift for 3 days that I've already had set up and had 5 people push this thing and help me, and I ain't pushing it back out the door. I'll sit there and wait 30 minutes and it cost me an hour. But it's all I had to do any day. After that, I went and delivered the transmission and stayed at the other shop for like 2 or 3 hours. I'm like, I was telling George about the whole ordeal, but yeah, that's a situation that actually kind of happens, and that's the reality behind what goes on that you've had to deal with, right? Like, what's your worst situation of dealing with something like that?
My worst situation. I had to go back to learning about different things in the transmissions that I was building. I live in Ohio. And I sold a transmission to a shop in Virginia. Okay.
All right.
And this guy, he met me halfway. I delivered it to him halfway. He took it home. He put it in. And they drove it, I want to say it was only like 1,000 miles or so. And the low drum was bad. The sealing rings that go around. I didn't know that there was an updated part for that. And I had to drive all the way out to his shop. I pulled the transmission out of it, rebuilt it at his shop, and went all the way home. That was probably the worst experience I ever had. It was a long day.
Over a low drum?
Over a low drum. I was so tired.
I got lucky. I didn't have no, I didn't. That one I had to pull back out. I want to say maybe 6 months later, same thing happened.
Low drum.
I forgot to put the new drum in. Apparently, I put the new drum and the old drum beside each other and threw the new drum in the trash because I wanted to compare whether it was updated or not. And looking at everything, I'm doing quality control check and spending time in it. Either got pulled away from it or something and threw the other one in the trash.
Throwing away good parts.
Yeah, it worked for 6 months.
Well, yeah, I mean, it works until it doesn't.
Yeah, and that's the bigger thing that happens. That's why, the stuff that we do, we need to be focused on what we're doing. We don't need to be pulled away from it.
Well, let me ask you, how many times a day when you're in the middle of a rebuild, how many times a day do you get pulled away from it for whatever questions?
That's why I bought the $700 iPod Air cancellation headphones recently. 3 times. A technician and 2 service advisors had tried to talk to me while they're coming by, and I can't hear jack shit. I'm just like, and just keeping on going. I'll look at them and smile.
In the zone.
I'm like, it's so much dead air that it's hilarious to me, but I'm just like, I get it. I get it to the point where they get it and they just end up walking away. Nobody touches me. They might look at me something funny or like I'm in the middle of something. One of the techs would try to come up and show me something on their phone while I'm in the middle of it, and I just keep on going and just smile. I'm like, ain't happening today, buddy.
Yep.
It ain't happening today. I've gotten to that point where I'll tell them, especially if I'm torquing head bolts. In the last 7 years, I've let just about every single service advisor that I've worked with know that if they ever try to approach me and I'm torquing cylinder head bolts, that they're going to do it the damn self, and they're going to go to the parts department and buy new cylinder head bolts, and they're going to go back and redo it themselves, and I'll hand them the torque wrench and be like, you're doing it.
Yep.
I'll see you later. I'm going home.
Yeah.
And they learn. But yeah, that's a part of the communication breakdown that happens. It doesn't matter if it's the OE level, independent level, or anything that should be like even at the mobile side. But when we get down to like the consumer side, it's going to be something that I'm going to be talking about next week. And I've got a really, really good person in mind to have good conversation with this of where this industry is and where it's leading into, that has really specific information or specific questions that would lead not just at those levels, but is geared 100% towards OE and what's going on in the future. They want to know what's going on at the high end, and are they fixing it? What are they doing?
I'm interested to see what he says.
Yeah, I know, because he's going to try to be the best that he can at having that conversation and trying to be respectful and professional about it, because he knows that on social media, who we are, he listens to us, and we're the professionals. He's not, and he understands that, and wishes sometimes, that he could afford what we're doing, and he understands that, we have a job, we have overhead, we have all this stuff that we have on top of our plates that we have to pay for, taxes and regulation. That's a big thing to him, and he just wants to know, what's the life expectancy on a new vehicle? Doesn't matter the manufacturer, like if they maintain it correctly.
That's a loaded question.
That's what I told him, and that's where we'll leave it at that point. Identifying communication breakdown as the root issue. It doesn't matter at the OE level or the management side, sales side, service side. It doesn't matter if we're on the OE side or if we're at the independent side. Communication is the biggest problem that we do have. And until everybody has either a conversation to stay on the same page, understanding that communication is the biggest problem with the industry. And we brought it on ourselves because we divided out and we did this, we said this, or this shop's saying one thing or another, and the consumer sees that. So it's just mixed amount of information that's out there. And until we streamline it and we fix it and put out corrective information where everybody's on the same page, that's the only thing we can try to do, is try to teach others to be on the same page. Work together. We're all here to work together. We're here to get paid for what we're doing and paid appropriately. But how we're doing that is, every shop's different.
You're right. I can tell you that I've worked at multiple Chrysler and GM dealers, and not one of them was the exact same.
Agreed. Every time I left, I will tell you that every time I left the dealer, that my pay rate increased substantially every single time. And it was odd. At first, it was like, wow, I'm just, I'm getting offered this to go here, to go do this and do that. And they looked at my training stats, and I didn't really realize at the time the reason why they were doing that, because they were getting paid for my training stats. And I was being used.
Yep. And then they're like, you can fix the hardest of hardest problems, and that's all you'll get. We're paying you well.
Yeah, but there's no incentive to make any more.
No, there isn't.
Even if I did, it wasn't worth it because I was doing too much. I was too efficient.
Too efficient.
It's been a long one.
Yeah.
This has been a long one. This is a good one. This will be pretty good. I hope that a lot of people take a lot from this.
I do too.
Even though that it's we're trying to be streamlined in the conversation of where we're going from the OE level, plus being independent and then being a shop owner as well. I'm in retail. I am nothing but a resale agent, but I'm a technician at an independent shop and a lead tech at a dealership all at the same time. Then I'm a content creator at the same time. The hands are all over the place, and it's because the dealership's slow. All the stuff that I do there takes a lot of time to do, figuring out hard to fix problems and issues. And at the same time, I'm managing building a transmission at the same time. So if I get a couple of headaches that come in, I'm waiting on a whole bunch of parts, I manage to work in a unit and I'll put a stop on it. And just about every single morning, the service manager will come to me and ask me, do I need to give you anything to do? So today I told him no. Yesterday I told him no. I'm like, feed the rest of the shop. I'm fine with what I'm doing. I've got my headache nightmares that are sitting here waiting on some things. I don't need to take on anymore. And the other guys need the hours. So I see that. So I'm basically dispatcher, shop foreman, whatever you want to call it, but not having the status. And I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be.
And most people wouldn't have done that. They would have been like, give me everything you have. Screw those guys.
Yeah, because these are the people that I've worked with for the last decade. All of them. And I know what they're going through. I know what they're feeling. And as soon as I feel the drop, I see it ahead of time. I'm not kind of really worried about it because I'm just trying to teach the industry. I'm just trying to share information and pass it along because the next generation, but I'm still making money in between, still running a business. And the more now that I'm having these conversations with a lot of you guys, you know, it means a lot more to me that I'm doing that and sharing your knowledge and sharing your experience, what you went through and what your ideas, and thinking about, you know, the dealership that you're dealing with stuff right now. And they're telling you not to say this stuff on social media.
Yeah, I straight up told them they can fuck off. I was not having that. I think they got the message. The thing that scares me about it is if I were younger and less experienced and more afraid, I think they would have taken complete control of me and advantage of the situation. They pulled some things that if I was 25 years old, they probably would have got away with.
That's why I worry about the other guys.
Yeah. Me too.
Like Alex said something on the podcast, and I'm not gonna lie, and I made a short out of it, and I told him, like, you got some balls wearing your uniform and saying what you just said.
I saw that.
We had 2 GM reps that came in the next day.
No way.
And they were in the office with the service manager. And all the other guys saw it first, and they went straight to Alex, and then they came to me about it, and I was like, all right, I started cleaning up all my tools, putting them, like, all right, we're going to sit down and we're going to brawl when it happens, because I'm going to stand up for him and I'm not going to back down regardless of what he wants to say. Alex kind of got involved in the whole situation. He said, I said what the hell I said.
So they actually had addressed it.
No, they didn't.
Okay.
No, they didn't. But everybody had him kind of like trying to think that, you know, they were there to talk to him, but it had nothing to do with him. In the end, it had nothing to do with him. But, you know, we set the stage of, you know, you make your bed, you lie in it. And are you going to be that person to stand up, or are you just going to sit here and be that person just to say something and then back down? And I'm proud of him, because I was ready to stand there right with him. That, you know, this is, it doesn't matter. And this is the truth.
I think that we are on the cusp of something really amazing here. I think that now more than ever, technicians have a more powerful voice than they've ever had. And I think that we need to start using it like you are now. Like I try, I don't make as much meaningful videos as I'd like to sometimes, but I try, you know, trying to get my voice out there. But I think that with everything that's happening in our industry and the technician shortage, we definitely have more power than we think.
I believe so too, because the bigger motion that I see that even at the dealer level. I mean, this would even happen at the independent level. So if we take it all into account, OE and independent all at the same time, those that are fed up being told what they're doing, that, you know, they haven't had a pay increase for X amount of time, and They're not getting hours. They're not being taken care of. And they're being taken advantage of, basically, that they know and they're efficient, but they're not getting paid effectively for it. Or we'll get you on the next one. Well, they couldn't afford it. We had to discount it. We'll get you on the next one. Stuff like that.
We had to take a couple of hours from you so the customer could afford our, sliding labor scale.
Yes, then we'll talk about that a different time. I deal with it too.
I hate the sliding labor scale.
That makes it makes no entire sense, and it makes no sense entirely, because if the scale is sliding, then where's the tech pay?
It doesn't.
It doesn't change for the technician. Well, the dealership's making more.
I feel like they're punishing the customers for spending more money. Thank you, Mr. Customer. Your labor rate went from $180 to $250 for this spark plug job.
Yep, I saw the video, and then they ask you to take the time off.
Yeah.
And your kickback was, why don't you discount your labor?
Yeah, they did not like that.
Yeah, that is something that never needs to happen in the entire industry. It's no different. If you're going to set the labor rate, then set the labor rate and stick to the labor rate. There is no. I know that there was a time where the diagnostic fee was like $79.99 coming to the door. We'll tell you everything wrong with your car for $79.99, and then we hit you with $120 labor rate for the repair. But we understood what the initial labor rate was, because basically that was more to pay the technician shop fees and a little bit of stuff, but it was to drive business. We understand, but is that devaluating at the same time? Is that devaluating? Are we still taking away, or are we just trying to pull in as a sales tactic? And then it's a discount.
I don't think we're devaluating in that aspect. I would say the dealership or shop would be making less money on the diag, but they're getting the repair. It makes it easier on the customer, and the technician still gets paid.
Can you do that on newer vehicles?
Yeah. Well, all right. So listen, we talked about picoscopes. Okay. So you're diagnosing a car with a picoscope with a car that has however many modules on it. These systems are more advanced than they've ever been ever. How do you put a value on how many hours you're supposed to have in diagnosing this car? Now imagine a customer having to pay for this.
Yes, I agree with that. That's a hard one. That is a hard one, because I've seen other people now that it's a minimum of 2 hours, period. It doesn't matter what the issue is on a brand new vehicle, that their labor rate is a minimum of 2 hours at $210 an hour. So it's $420 for me to tell you, or just to start the diagnosis and write up an estimate and get everything together for you, or we don't touch the vehicle.
Right.
I mean, things are getting that way.
Yeah.
But setting the expectation when the consumer comes in would be important. And I believe this is on a high-end vehicle. This is not anything like a Chevy or a Dodge or a Honda or anything like that. This is a more high-end vehicle. But that was an extreme of a situation to where it's a minimum of $420 when you bring it in. I mean, but that's a high-end side versus the lower-end side, where we're looking at, from a comparative of some of the comments in that one comment section of the video, anywhere from $50 to $75. I mean, that's the lowest end. But at that point, they're not doing anything. They're not making any profit.
Right.
They're basically paying them. They're just, I don't even know where the money's going at that point.
No, they're paying the technician basically just to diagnose the car. It's a wash. It would be a wash at that point. Well, okay, so that would be the same thing as, do you guys do video inspections at your dealership?
We have the ability to, but nobody knows how to do it.
Yeah, okay. So well, let's think about the inspection process. Okay, you look at the car, you take your tread depth measurements, you make a video on it, fill the fluids, top off anything that's low, washer fluid. You check over the whole car. How long does that take you?
Probably an hour.
Okay. And how much are you getting paid for that hour?
Nothing. So at this dealership, it is not even 0.3. At the dealership Toby just came from, which I used to work with as well, they pay 0.3, but there's no like visual video inspection or anything like that. It's basically a visual and a shakedown, minor shakedown, like nothing major, just simple stuff, just doing a full visual inspection, and that's basically it. There's nothing beyond that. Those technicians get paid 0.3. The technicians at the shop that I'm at now don't even get paid 0.3. And Toby is like coming from that aspect that I knew when her coming over, and I really didn't explain that to her up front. She was like, "Oh my technicians would have lost their freaking mind if they didn't get paid that 0.3." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but these guys over here just don't care. They don't know that life."
Right. Yeah, we don't get paid. Have you ever worked at a shop that paid you anything to do all that? It's free.
But there's some shops that do pay up to 0.7, I've heard, for
crazy
for a DVI, digital video inspection, and just going over everything.
That's crazy. So if you're not getting paid anything to do all that, that's kind of like a give and take. The dealership you're not getting paid to do that inspection, but the dealership's not really making money on your diagnostic, and you're both hoping that you can sell the repair. That's kind of what so we're both hoping that we can sell the repair. We both need to work together to sell the repair, because at this point we haven't really made any money.
Yeah, but it's basically that, not everything's it's not an upsell. Basically, we're explaining everything to the consumer, and this is what we see of potential issues and problems, wear items, something to look at and pay attention to in the future. Maybe on the next visit, we'll take a look at it again, or it's something to prepare them financially of a major situation that they may have in the long run, so they can start saving money up for, put money back what they can handle and afford, and just try to budget. Technicians cannot always budget because we don't know what we're making for.
Nope. It's almost impossible to budget when you don't have, and like the fluctuation is thousands of dollars.
Yeah, because you got to take a look at everything that you have and everything that you want to put or make extra to set aside, set that as a goal, and work your tail off to make that goal. So but if everything's coming through the door is warranty, you don't get paid any diag.
No, you get I think it's less than an hour, but even then you have to fight for it.
Yeah, there's some people on the GM side that don't even get paid anything. And the maximum that they could get paid anything beyond a labor op would be like the maximum of 2 hours. But the way that GM wants to word it is like, so sample issue. And I'm curious on what the aftermarket side would do. So if this was at your shop, we're going to take a warranty situation, manufacturing warranty situation, and it was at your shop, and we'll say that you did a repair, and this would be a comeback situation warranty under your side. So the failed part is a lifter. The labor op should be the lifter. The OLH or other labor hours beyond the failed component is the camshaft, causal damage. So the lifter only pays 6 hours, but the camshaft pays 21. How do you do that on the aftermarket side?
So this would be a comeback scenario?
Yes, but it's a failed part that you purchased from an aftermarket vendor. So then what do you do with? What do you do with that situation?
That's hard. Hit me with the hard questions today. So aftermarket, if it wasn't warranty, so the lifter, you replace the lifter already, correct?
So this is This is an aftermarket warranty situation. You just did cam and lifters on a vehicle. I don't care if it's Hemi. I don't care if it's an LS block. You just did cam and lifters on it, and a lifter fails again in a comeback situation. But it's you have to warranty out the repair. But the failed part is the lifter. The causal is camshaft. If it takes the cam out. So then how do you warranty that? Take care of it with your vendor. No different than the manufacturer. So we're dealing with the manufacturer under factory warranty, but aftermarket, you're dealing with a vendor, and you're like, well, it just ate the cam up, and they'll tell you, how do you submit the claim that the failed part is the lifter, or do you tell them it was camshaft?
Well, you replace the cam and lifters from that vendor. You bought them both from that vendor, and their lifter failed and caused the cam to fail. So then really they should cover the cam and lifters again because it was their parts.
But when you submit the claim, do you tell them that it was a do you tell them that it was the lifter that caused the failure, or
Yes.
do you just say that whatever is going to pay the most? But say that if you tell them that the lifter failed, even though that, you know, both parts were kind of covered, but you tell them that the lifter failed, they'll only use a labor op for the lifter and they won't use the labor op for the cam, but they'll give you a new camshaft, but they'll bust you on the labor difference.
Yeah, we'll have to figure. We're gonna call somebody. We're gonna call. We're calling somebody. That's rough. Yeah.
Yeah, because most of the guys, you know, under manufacturer warranty, they're going to run it on the cam labor op.
Yep. Well, they're gonna want to know. I guess it depends on what level warranty. You guys have different levels of warranty in GM, don't you? I can't remember. As far as your dealership goes, like with Chrysler, there's like platinum and I don't know. They have different levels of warranty. And if you're at the highest level, they don't really fight your claims. You guys are good. You're in compliance with everything. And they kind of just let things slide, you know. But if you're like,
It's whether you're on engine or transmission assembly restriction, saying that you replace
yes,
too
that's
many.
yeah.
There would be a point of that, and then they make you have to do a cost analysis of everything before they even do all that stuff before they even tell you to. But even with like 6.2 liters, there's no answer. Like I'm gonna put an engine in it if I pull the oil filter off and it's slap full of bearing material.
Right.
I mean, it's done because there's specific bulletins to run through that, and some of the guys have shot some kickback with me about that they're being told that they have to rebuild it.
Yeah.
That they've had to rebuild it multiple times or had another unit put in and still having failure. And I'm like asking them, like, are y'all replacing the entire cooling system, the intake, the radiator? And there's a specific bulletin that is an automatic engine replacement. And the only thing you have to do is remove the filter and inspect for bearing material. You have to go no further than that. And they're being told, and like, we can't do that because of we're on restriction. And I'm like, that bulletin does not apply to this situation. And they kind of don't understand that. So, yeah, that would be the fight that they would have that you're going to end up having on the independent side, right?
Right. Yeah. And now, I mean, especially with the way things are now, the warranty companies are starting to become a little cutthroat. They're looking for any loophole they can to get out of having to pay for something.
Yep, they are. And they cut me on one recently, and they're sitting back drinking their lattes. I'm in a meeting for 4 or 5 hours. I'm sorry, I can get back to you by the end of the day, and then give me an answer on something. I'm like, oh, we're going to only pay it this much.
Yeah. We're only going to cover $75 a labor hour, and we're not going to cover your fluids or taxes.
Yeah.
Or diag.
I'm just like, ticket's still open, by the way. I'm still fighting that. Me and the service advisor back and forth with the service manager and the sales department at the same time because we sell that extended warranty. Like somebody's going to pay up. And I'm like, I don't care if I have to go up there and take it out of the sales department.
You know, I was in a situation at a GM dealer that I worked at where we owned the warranty company that we sold with our cars. Okay. We owned this company, and the company would dictate what they would pay as far as the repairs go. You know, with the parts prices, the labor time, everything. And it was always way less than what we were quoting. And instead of going to the customer and asking for the difference, they were afraid that it would make the dealership look bad, so they just made us eat it.
I know some places that do that.
I'm like, we own this company. Make a phone call. Do something. You know, I mean, get it covered somehow. Call someone. Like they were sending us, we owned this company, okay, and we were a GM dealership, and they were sending us transmissions, GM transmissions built by a third-party company. I'm like, we had 20 6L80 transmissions in stock, and they sent us one aftermarket from the company that we owned. Yeah. Make it make sense.
I don't understand the concept. I don't understand the business sense.
I think it was just cheaper that way for them.
So if they own the remanufacturing facility and kept, God, this sounds like monster.
It might be. I don't know.
I didn't say the rest of it, okay?
Schmonsters. Schmonster schmishmissions.
But still, I've seen some good stuff out of them here and there, and it was more of a truck issue. But
They were doing some good informational videos for a while.
Yeah, but not everything's in the informational videos there. There's always a missing part because not everything there is completely encapsulated in the conversation. You know what I'm saying? It's like one person that would say, well, to buy the deluxe kit and it will fix everything.
Yep. You
Like
just buy this kit, it'll fix every problem you have.
That's why I don't sell kits. The people have asked me to put some stuff together. I'm like, but it might not always fix the problem that you do have.
Right.
Unless you're willing to spend an additional $1,000 per unit on a 6-speed for another Tecum.
Right. I know that I don't know what you do. I know it's kind of controversial, but I always replace them. I've been burnt too many times by trying to clean them.
Because you don't have the test plate, do you?
I did. Don't get mad at me, but I lost it.
I mean, it happens.
I owned one, and I had a storage unit, and I forgot to pay the storage unit, and it's gone, along with my wood lathe. I was so sad.
Well, beyond any of that, I was at a point where I was replacing them all the time. And then I started listening to the guys in the Rebuilders Association. You know, I was pointing things out, and I was saying stuff at one point that I didn't realize was wrong. I'd had people call me and they have this issue, this weird problem with their transmission, and would call me and say, well, they're telling me that I have to spend another $700 to replace this module. Why didn't they replace it in the first place? I don't know. Did they not set the expectation before that it may or may not need it? If it needs it, then it's going to be X amount. Like, either trying to quote it both ways, but I want to put it in one shot now. And with the price hike, as much as it went up to, and started looking into stuff like that, and ordered a couple of reman ones that Scott Hetrick had done, and both of them worked out fine. One was, I thought it was a problem with the Tecum. Wasn't a problem with the Tecum. It was an issue somewhere. It was in a balance piston in the 3.5R 154 drum. Somehow when I assembled it, it'll air check, and even compensator feed will air check, and you'll hear the hiss through compensator feed, and when you release it, it does release, but it's not like a quick hit. And basically it was causing a 2-3 flare, and a part of the two sections of the pistons had just met each other and just nicked one lip seal, or one of the, not a lip seal, but you know what I'm saying, D-ring seal.
Yeah, the D-ring.
Yeah, the D-ring, and just nicked it enough, and I pulled it apart, and I told George, I'm like, I ain't never. I mean, there's no way to tell that's even a problem, an issue, even air checking it.
Right.
And we thought it was a Tecum, placed the Tecum, problem still there, and I'm like, stick the Tecum back in, and I'm like, all right, we got to pull it to figure out what it is. And I've never had one. Now I can see the signs coming out, taking the transmission apart. If the 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch or the 4, 5, 6 is burnt, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be testing everything through the entire Tecum before I determine that I'm going to put a new one in it. Because if it's still good, I mean, they'll last. And there's no reason to replace a module that doesn't need to get replaced if it can be clean, rebuilt, and put back together. Because then we're losing $700-800 now in all of the profit that's going to be basically most of towards everything out of it. And if that's a bench build, then it could really make or break everything. Right. Probably need to shut this off because we're about 2 hours and 20 minutes into. We could sit here and talk all night.